Number 10. War Woman. War Woman takes a bit of inspiration from Thor and a little bit of inspiration from Wonder Woman. She is a hero who comes from another, more fantastical world. Due to her more divine heritage, she is amazingly strong and durable. We didn't see her as much in the comics, but in the show, she appears as a force to be reckoned with. War Woman was an original member of the Guardians of the Globe, a superhero team that came from all over the world. In the show, in her everyday secret identity, War Woman posed as Holly and was the head of a major corporation in Boston. She hoped to use her company as well to make the world a better place. Even when she wasn't in her hero persona, she was striving to be a hero. Number 9. Damien Darkblood. Damien Darkblood was only a minor character in the comics, appearing in only a handful of issues in the main Invincible series. Darkblood is a mysterious demon detective. Think Hellboy meets John Constantine with a little bit of Spawn or Damon Hellstrom mixed in. Solving cases on Earth gives him time away from Hell and seems to be his way of kind of atoning for his past, or his demon heritage, or perhaps lessening his sentence in Hell. He has some demon-based powers that seem to allow him to appear in the darkness, lurk in the shadows, potentially unseen, see through maybe the darkness, and perhaps even teleport. He also seems to have a sixth sense for evil, but mostly he is known as a skilled investigator. His obsession with the truth also reminds me a bit of Rorschach, and he seems to be determined to uncover the truth in a very particular case, and once uncovered to gather enough evidence to expose this truth to the world. Number 8. Monster Girl. And I'm not just putting her on this list because her name is also Amanda. Monster Girl is a powerful character who can change into an intensely powerful Hulk-like monster. The problem? It de-ages her a bit every time she transforms. This is because Monster Girl's powers were given to her by a curse. Initially, her powers were hard for her to control, but with training and practice, she was able to control her transformations, choosing when she wanted to transform. In her monster form, she has superhuman strength and durability. She also becomes a massive beast, and the younger she becomes, actually the more massive her beast form is. So if she is a young girl and transforms into her beast form, it's going to be larger than if she were to transform into a beast as an older woman. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn even more about Invincible, please let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Please do it. I really want to talk about more Invincible. Number 7. Alan. Alan is a bureaucratic alien who is a champion evaluation officer. He flies around to planets to make sure registered guardians there are prepared for potential lesser intergalactic threats. For many years, he has been coming to Earth to battle Omni-Man under the notion that he was doing his job and his duty. He later discovered that he may have misunderstood some information and went to the wrong planet for years to check in. Oops. Alan belongs to the Unopan race. As such, he possesses the powers of telepathy, superhuman strength, endurance, and speed. He can even evolve to become stronger upon defeat, allowing him to adapt to his opponents so that he can match or beat them in terms of their power levels. Alan, of course, is also capable of flying through space, which is how he travels from planet to planet, checking in on his assigned guardians. Number 6. Robot. Robot appears to be an AI. He is a robotic being who is gifted with a genius-level intellect and a barrage of powers related to his cybernetic body. He is a skilled leader and is very good at scientific analysis. If there is a problem that needs solving, especially if it pertains to the field of science, Robot can likely find the answer and provide a solution, and do it all in a very timely manner. Robot also, for a time in the comics, had an army of drones that he could call upon and bend to his will, using them to aid his team in battle. Robot is perfectly voiced by Zachary Quinto in the Amazon Prime series, and honestly, I think he might be my favorite character of those that we've seen so far in that animated series. Well, actually, he's tied with Debbie, Mark's mom, who I'm also a pretty big fan of. I do love Debbie. I really wanted to put Debbie on this list. I was very tempted to put her at my number 1 spot, but she doesn't actually have powers, so. But she's very strong of heart and of mind, I feel. Number 5, the Immortal. The Immortal is one of the initial members that we meet who belongs to the Guardians of the Globe. He's got a little bit of a Vandal Savage or Old Guard feel, but his only power isn't just his immortality, though it's probably his greatest power. He can fly, is capable of intergalactic travel, and has superhuman strength, speed, durability, and endurance. The Immortal has been alive for thousands of years, and although he's tried to die in the past, it's pretty much impossible. He can heal from almost all wounds, no matter how great or how severe. Based on what we know about Immortal, he can come back from pretty much anything, but just how much damage is even too much damage for him? Number 4, Adam Eve. Adam Eve definitely has to be one of the strongest ones out there. Her powers are similar to that of Marvel's Invisible Woman, minus the invisible part. But she also kind of gives me a bit of a Starfire feel, even though she is not an alien like Corey is. Adam Eve's real name is Samantha Eve Wilkins. When we first meet her in the animated series, she's the girlfriend of fellow teammate Rexplode. The two heroes work together as members of a more minor superhero team known as the Teen Team. And she is one of the heroes besides Omni-Man who offers to mentor Invincible. Her powers allow her to manipulate energy at a subatomic level, either organic or inorganic. She uses this ability to give herself powers in the form of flight, force fields, energy blasts, telekinesis, and energy constructs. She also is extremely hard to permanently kill. I don't want to give anything away, but I'm just going to leave it at that. Number 3, Omni-Man. Omni-Man is obviously one of the strongest characters that we see in the series and in the show. He's built up to be that way, and he remains that way pretty much throughout. Omni-Man is an alien known as a Viltrumite, who hailed from the planet Viltrum. In case any of this is sounding familiar to you, yeah, he's pretty much the Invincible version of DC's Superman. But the great thing about this series is that it takes archetypal heroes like Superman that you think you know and kind of offers you a different perspective on them. And Omni-Man is definitely that. During the beginning of the series, we learn that Omni-Man is Invincible's dad, and we come to see him as an all-powerful hero. He claims to have come to Earth to become its sworn protector, and shortly after arriving here, he met and fell in love with Debbie, Mark's mother, and then he had Mark. Omni-Man is extremely strong, fast, durable, and tough. He can fly, ages slower, can travel through space, he's invulnerable, his skin basically impenetrable, and he has enhanced healing, which allows him to bounce back more quickly than humans from wounds that would typically be deemed life-threatening. Number 2, Invincible. While Invincible might seem kinda inexperienced now where we're at in the show, it's established in the Invincible universe in the comics that Viltrumites get stronger throughout the familial generations. This means that in the comics, Mark is the one that inevitably ends up on top when it comes to who has more power than who. Of course, he still has a lot of work to do in the Amazon Prime show when it comes to tapping into that power and finding the best way to utilize it. But even as a beginner, he's still very much a force to be reckoned with, which is definitely acknowledged by his fellow supers around him. And while you might point to the fact that he is the son of both Omni-Man and Debbie, so you know he's half human, that does not override the genetic traits of his dad's side. Invincible will likely continue to get stronger as the show progresses, just like he did in the comics. I wonder if this version of him will also discover the multiverse. And will he see the comic version of him through it? He's like, oh, that's me, but like in Image Comics as opposed to the show. That'd be cute. Number 1, Battle Beast. What hero could be stronger than Invincible, whom the series and show are both named after, you ask? Well, this entry on the list isn't a hero at all, actually. Battle Beast, also known as Thok, is a villain who has been shown as being powerful enough to kick Invincible's butt and even take on several Viltrumites at once. Battle Beast is an intergalactic warrior who comes from a race of people known for their prowess in battle. He started out as the guardian of a planet, being the fiercest warrior there, but eventually became obsessed with finding a worthy opponent who could defeat him. So he ventured out into the galaxy looking for that worthy opponent on distant worlds, wreaking havoc on each one as he searched, and would find no one strong and skilled enough to defeat him. Or would he? Number 10, Isotope. Teleportation has always been for me one of the strongest powers that exists in the comics. Isotope is no exception there. What he lacks probably is his own drive and the intelligence needed to be a leader himself. It is for this reason that we likely see him playing second fiddle to Machine Head in the animated series. He seems to prefer to be more of a supervillain's lackey than a supervillain in his own right. Still, without him, Machine Head doesn't have the getaway he needs, meaning that he's kinda trapped. And Isotope is still a smart enough villain to know when it's a good idea to abandon ship, which is why he decided to ally himself with Titan instead of Machine Head going forward. Number 9, Cecil Stedman. Cecil might only be a human, but he's still a pretty smart human, one who knows when to make moves and how to stack the deck in his favor. He is the one who tells the Guardians of the Globe what to do, not their leader so much as just their boss. His only power comes from tech in the animated series, which allows him to teleport using bracelets. Surprisingly, Cecil is unafraid to face supervillains and superheroes who are far more powerful than him in terms of what he is capable of. You may have noticed that he seems to have a bunch of small scars on his lip or near his lip in the animated series. In the comics, we learn that this is because years ago, as a government agent, while on a mission, he was exposed to a flesh-eating gas. He was saved and then had the skin that had been eaten away replaced, save for that one spot to remind him of how bad he'd messed up. While his methods are sometimes questionable, there is nothing Cecil wouldn't sacrifice to try and save the world. Number 8. Titan. Titan is the character that we first see Invincible run into and beat up when he first gets his powers in the animated series. But just because Mark beats him straight out of the gate doesn't mean you should dismiss this villain. Later on in the series and also the comics, Titan would deceive Invincible. In the animated series, we see him come to Invincible asking for help. He claims he wants out of his life as a criminal, wanting to go straight for his family. He asked for Invincible's help in defeating Machine Head so that he can be free. But just like in the comics, after Machine Head is defeated, Titan steps in to take his place as the new ruler of Machine Head's criminal empire. His powers grant him enhanced strength and endurance, allowing him to encase his body in rock. But what really makes him powerful is his ability to manipulate others into doing his bidding. Granted, he probably will be a better crime lord than Machine Head. I mean, he's gotta be, right? Number 7. Dinosaurus. Dinosaurus is David Anders, who has the power to turn into, you guessed it, a dinosaur, specifically resembling a humanoid T-Rex. This change comes upon him whenever he feels a sense of indifference towards something. While in his Dinosaurus form, David is granted superhuman levels of strength, toughness, and agility. He also is smarter in his dino form, often using his genius to outsmart his opponent, or to manipulate them. His genius intellect also kind of gives him a god complex as well, making him obsessed with solving humanity's problems, but at any cost. Whenever he switches back to his human self, any injuries he has sustained also heal instantly. Number 6. Duplicate. Duplicate is one of the members of the new Guardians of the Globe. Her abilities are pretty cool and allow her to create an unlimited number of duplicates of herself. Her powers are actually the result of an ancient Chinese curse and were meant to cause her family to go insane. Her father actually gave up his children for adoption after he learned that both she and her brother Paul both had this ability. Having children that could multiply at will would be very stressful. Kate and Paul would work towards gaining better control over their powers and would use them to fight crime together as a superhero duo, with Paul taking up the name Multi-Paul. Later, he would become a villain while Kate would remain a hero. Kate would go on to join the Teen Team and later the Guardians of the Globe. Number 5. Powerplex. Powerplex almost succeeded in defeating Mark and became one of his arch nemeses. This is because during a fight that Invincible and Omni-Man were having, the destruction they caused killed Powerplex's sister. Scott's powers allow him to absorb energy, however, it is possible to overload him. At one point, Scott attempts to attract Invincible's attention, but using his wife and son as bait, asking them to pretend to be his hostages. Mark arrives and attempts to save them, getting in a fight with Powerplex, aka Scott Duvall, who reveals the real reason for wanting to fight Invincible. When Invincible punches him, however, Powerplex overloads, exploding with excess energy. This explosion ends up killing his son and wife, who were playing hostage for him. Devastated at their deaths, this only makes Scott hate Mark even more, as he also now blames Invincible for their deaths as well. Number 4. Tech Jacket. Tech Jacket is a member of the Guardians of the Globe. He ends up joining the Invincible stable of characters later on in the comic series, becoming a recurring character, but actually first appears in his own spin-off series based in that universe, self-titled Tech Jacket. Tech Jacket is Zach Thompson, a hero who received an alien tech jacket after encountering a crashed spaceship and a dying alien. That alien's name was Kelda, and they belong to a physically fragile and weaker race of aliens known as the Geldarians. To compensate, they created the Tech Jacket for every member of their race to wear. The Tech Jacket is a permanent item of clothing that is generally never removed. It grants Zack enhanced speed, strength, stamina, and agility. It can create energy blasts and weapons for the user to wield. It can also create force fields and can clean and provide sustenance to its user when needed. If you are looking to the main Invincible series for Tech Jacket, check out issues 71 to 78. He appears in that little run of issues. He's also in a few other issues, but that's like a whole run you could read. Number 3, Conquest. Up until this point in the comics, Conquest was one of the scariest villains we had ever encountered, and one of the strongest, most durable Viltrumites we had yet to meet. Conquest is an older Viltrumite, believed to be even older than Mark's dad, Nolan, and Nolan is like thousands of years old. An experienced warrior, Conquest almost straight up murdered Adam Eve and Invincible, as well as Mark's brother Oliver, Kid Omni-Man. Even when Invincible got the upper hand in their fight, and he thought the Conquest was dead, with his face being headbutted by Mark until it was basically unrecognizable, it still turned out that he had somehow survived. The more bloody and brutal a fight gets, the more Conquest seems to actually enjoy it. He is crazy. Number 2, Tara. Tara is the daughter of Adam Eve and Invincible. She was born on Earth but would move to Telescria with her parents. Because she is part Viltrumite, she will likely grow up to be even stronger than her father who came before her, as this is usually the way with Viltrumites. This means that Tara has the potential to become stronger than both her father, grandfather, and of course anyone that they themselves have seemed capable of beating in battle. She is shown to have the natural superpowers and abilities of your average Viltrumite. But like I said, she has the potential for being one of the strongest. Number 1, Thrag. Or is it Throg? I mean, I haven't heard it said out loud yet, so Thrag or Throg, which one do we want to go with? Guess we'll kind of have to wait to find out when he shows up in the show. Whenever that happens. Thrag is the Grand Regent of the Viltrumite Empire, making them basically the ruler and, in effect, emperor, or the equivalent. He is a villain who initially wants Mark and his father Nolan dead. Thrag battles them on Earth and is briefly interrupted by Battle Beast. He is known for being the strongest Viltrumite and is also thousands of years old, having fought in the Viltrumite Civil War after the death of their emperor Argal. Thrag would end up being given the title of Grand Regent. He attempts to make a deal with Mark and Nolan that Viltrumites will take up residence on Earth as undercover aliens to help bolster the much depleted population of Viltrumites. However, he goes back on this deal of peace in exchange for cohabitation after he learns that Nolan was Argal's son and that Mark is therefore the heir to the throne, fighting to preserve his title. In the end, he is defeated, but only after everyone basically bands together and helps that to happen. Thrag still proves how powerful he is when he ends up being the one to defeat Battle Beast after days of battling with him, with both continuing to fight while disemboweled. Wow. Number 10, Machine Head. Machine Head may have been defeated in season 1 of the animated series and in the comics, but you have to admit he put up a surprisingly good fight, especially for a villain whose name is as lame as Machine Head. Machine Head has, well, a machine for a head. His robotic head allows him to easily get upgrades, which is what enables him to almost defeat the Guardians of the Globe, Invincible, and Titan. Although, to be fair, Titan pretty much bails soon after the battle turns against their favor because, I mean, well, he has other plans. Machine Head had, well, basically a probability chip installed, which in essence allows him to see the possible futures. This means that he was prepared for the potential attack of Invincible and the Guardians, and even managed to use his wealth and connections to get a ton of villains to join him, including Battle Beast, who almost single-handedly kills everyone, but gets bored of the fight, leaving early, seeing the heroic opponents as pretty much below him. Number 9, Debbie Grayson. I know some of you might be throwing a fit over me including Debbie here, but honestly, she is one of my top favorite characters, and after what everyone just witnessed her go through in season 1 of the animated series, especially in that finale there, I feel like she deserves a spot on this list. Debbie is the mother of Mark and is the human wife of Omni-Man. If you, like me, were terrified for her during the animated series because of how human she is, you can breathe a sigh of relief that she made it through safely. Whew, she made it through season 1, friends. Despite being human and therefore pretty fragile, Debbie is a fearsome character who is not afraid to confront her husband Nolan with the truth when she discovers that he was responsible for the deaths of the Guardians of the Globe and has been hiding it from her and everyone. Also, if we are talking about emotional and mental resilience here in terms of power, Debbie is one of the most powerful characters that I know. She has been to hell and back mentally and still manages to keep going. Perhaps at times broken, but never defeated. Number 8, Donald Ferguson. While Donald Ferguson might appear super squishy in the animated series, in the comics he's actually not so easy to defeat. In fact, Donald Ferguson is a cyborg, so that scene where Omni-Man grabs his spine, it likely wouldn't have gone down quite like that. Considering that Donald blew himself up in the show, it's unclear as to whether or not we'll get to see the cyborg version that we're used to. Probably not. In the comics, he actually ends up making it through to pretty much the end. Ferguson is mostly metal despite his appearance. You might not know it to look at him because he usually wears a synthetic skin over the metal parts that aren't on display. He usually uses his arms to fight, turning them into big guns or pulsar cannons. Number 7, Brit. Brit is kind of like a combination of Captain America and Luke Cage. He's got a military background and de-accelerated aging, as well as impenetrable skin. He also has a half-sister who is just about as badass and is also kinda super weird, who shares his name but spells it differently. Her name is Brittany. Brit's name is Brittany. There are a lot of Britneys in his family, actually. Many Britneys. Brit had 3 series of his own: Brit Cold Death, and Brit Red, White, Black, and Blue, but also appeared in Guarding the Globe Volume 1 from the Invincible universe. Brit also appeared more regularly in the Invincible series later on, but made his first appearance in there as early as issue 11. Number 6, Shrinking Ray. Shrinking Ray or Shrinking Ray? Shrinking Ray appears both in the comics and in the animated series, though the 2 versions of the characters are a little different from one another. In the comics, Shrinking Ray is a man and a hero whose origins remains a mystery. It is, however, rumored that Ray was an intern at Microorganics Limited who received his powers following an accident that took place there. There was apparently an intern named Ray that went missing after that accident. In the animated series, Ray is a woman whose powers are the same as her comic book counterpart. They both possess powers that allow them to change size at will, like Ant-Man or the Atom. Ray was considered in the comics to be a kind of obscure hero initially, but eventually he made his way onto the Guardians of the Globe, proving himself. However, Ray would continue to remain insecure about his power set in comparison to some of the other grander powers that his teammates possessed. Number 5, Brittany. Brittany is even stronger than her half-brother. She made her first appearance in issue 48 of Invincible, but really where she shines is in Brit's series, in my opinion. There we get to see what she is really capable of. Brittany has powers similar to her brother's. She has superhuman strength, invulnerable skin, and a much slower aging process. Brittany has also been shown to have a very close connection to her half-brother. At one point, when he is presumed dead, she looks at the skeletal remains that were retrieved and believed to be his, licks the skull, and is able to tell that it isn't her brother. That's really weird. She can also survive at extremely low temperatures. Number 4, Doc Seismic. Doc Seismic might not have survived till the end in the comics, but he had a good run. And odds are good if you thought that was the last that you would see of him in the animated series, that we were all misled there, and he will be back. In fact, in the comics, Dr. Seismic even wins the day, and not against any B or D-list heroes either. Invincible and Atom Eve themselves respond to his threat, and even they get their butts whooped. If you want to check out how Doc wins, check out issue 48. This was a villain that when I first saw him in the animated series, I immediately became a fan. He's just so outlandish, so ridiculous, but in that perfect comic book villain way, where you know he'll likely end up winning the day almost because of his flair for the dramatic. As someone who also has a flair for the dramatic, I can get behind it. Number 3, Rexplode. I mean, who doesn't love a Gambit-inspired hero? Am I right? With just a dash of Jubilee mixed in. See, as an example, the fireworks display that Rex sets off in an attempt to get Eve's attention and apologize after cheating on her. Rex might not always be the most bright, kind, or approachable of the bunch, but at the end of the day, his heart is in the right place and he truly is a hero. Initially, he and Eve spent time together on the run, which was what brought them together to begin with. Rex's powers allow him to charge objects, turning them into explosives. He typically fights with smaller objects so that these explosions are more controlled. But during the events of Invincible War, he would end up giving his life against a threat so great that it seemed it would be impossible for the heroes to win the day. He supercharges his skeleton, creating a massive explosion that would save the day, but cost him his life. Sure, he died, but having the conviction to follow through with a plan like that, in addition to his abilities, which I think are pretty cool, makes him pretty powerful in my books. Number 2, Black Samson. Black Samson originally had superpowers that granted him superhuman strength, endurance, and durability, and was an original member of the Guardians of the Globe. However, after he lost his powers, he was kicked off of the team. Yearning to return to a life of heroism, he had Art make him a suit which would allow him to hopefully one day return, augmenting his abilities. Initially, it was believed that Black Samson could have killed the Guardians, seeking revenge for them kicking him off of the team, but this was later disproved as Samson had an alibi and had been home at the time of their death. Samson would later use his suit to get himself a place back on the Guardians of the Globe team when Robot was assembling the new squad. During the fight against Machine Head, Samson was gravely injured and would end up comatose. However, when he awoke, his superpowers had returned to him and were actually even more powerful than before, meaning that he no longer needed to wear his suit. His power levels were way higher than normal when he first awoke, allowing him to turn the tides in the fight against the villain Omnipotus. Number 1. Bulletproof. Bulletproof initially tried out for the Guardians of the Globe, but he actually didn't make the cut. However, he'd later be added to the team because of his flight powers. Bulletproof is Zandale Randolph, who got his powers because of his twin brother Tyrone's obsession with superpowers. Tyrone drugged his brother and decided to experiment on him because his genes were so similar to his own, with them being identical twins. Tyrone would be successful in giving his brother powers, but would die in the process. Zandale's powers make him virtually invincible. He can absorb energy, has enhanced healing, superhuman strength, speed, and endurance. He is also capable of interstellar flight. He is invulnerable to energy-based attacks, including kinetic energy-based attacks. He took the name Bulletproof because, well, he is that. But he would later go on to also take up Mark's mantle of Invincible, which I think is also pretty appropriate. Number 10. Volcanica. Volcanica only appears in a few issues, but she is a pretty hot villain. Literally hot, that is. She rules the caverns of the rocky world beneath the Earth's crust. She first appears in issue 106 of Invincible, where she aims to make Doc Seismic her consort, turning him into a lava being and titling him the King of the Underworld. She and Doc Seismic then head out to try and conquer the surface world together. Their first battle ends with their retreat, but they at least got what they came for. Volcanica isn't just a lava elemental, but also rules the cavernous subterranean area of Earth, and all of its creatures that live there as well. Number 9. Monax. Monax is the son of Monster Girl and Zal Zaxel of Flaxen royalty. Zal was his mother and Monster Girl his father. Monster Girl and Zal conceived the child together while Amanda was in her male monster form, in case you were wondering how that worked. Monax came to Earth with the Flaxen Empire in an attempt to conquer it years after, in his dimension, Monster Girl and Robot had left. Not knowing that Monster Girl had a child with Zal and seeking to protect the peace that they had created during their time in the Flaxen dimension, Robot, before they left, ordered all Zaxels and their relatives to be killed to prevent an uprising from ever happening. However, this obviously was not how that went down. Zal was killed, but Monax survived, returning to Earth to get his revenge on his father and on Robot for what they had done to him, the Zaxels, and the Flaxen Empire. And friends, if you are loving this list and you want more Invincible lists, more, let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Omnipotus. Omnipotus was a global level threat that took all of Earth's heroes teaming up to defeat. Omnipotus came from another world and dimension where he had drained his home of all of its energy. Omnipotus came to Earth to feed on more energy to give him even more power. He almost succeeded too, but in the end, Black Samson awoke, rejuvenated, and restored. With his powers returned and at a higher level than previous due to his time spent comatose, Black Samson pushed Omnipotus back through his warp gate, sending him back from whence he came, and then destroyed his warp key so that Omnipotus could never return. However, Omnipotus would later return as a villain and fight Invincible and Dinosaurus. Dinosaurus would defeat him and ultimately destroy him. Omnipotus kind of reminds me of Marvel's Galactus. Does anyone else get that vibe? Number 7. Anissa. Initially, Anissa is an ally of the Viltrumite Empire, and because of that reason is an enemy of Invincible and of Earth. She initially shows up and attempts to convince Mark to join the Empire and help them to conquer Earth. Mark, however, is not really interested in this plan and refuses to help her or the Viltrumite Empire. Later on, Anissa returns with Thrag, or Throg, depending on how you want to say it, and attempts to live in secret on Earth to help the Viltrumites rebuild their population by mating with humans. However, Anissa cannot find a suitable mate and also shares that she never really wanted to procreate to begin with. She assists in defeating Throg when she finds out that Omni-Man is the true heir to the Viltrumite Empire, but she also ends up seeing Mark as a potential mate, despite the fact that Mark at this point is with Eve. Anissa doesn't care, and she even forces herself on Mark, leaving him traumatized for many years, unable to even reach out and really tell anyone what happened to him for a long time. Years later, Anissa returns to Earth to help them when Throg's children come to attack. She is changed at this point and regrets what she did to Mark. However, her assault on him also produced a son, and that part she doesn't regret, as she loves her and Mark's son, Marcus. Pretty complicated character and villain. Number 6. Evil Marks. When it comes to Invincible, who would be a stronger villain than Invincible himself? Or rather, multiple Invincibles. During the event of Invincible War, multiple Marks start appearing, who are all from alternate realities and who are all evil. They have come to destroy Invincible physically and mentally, also destroying his reputation as a hero. In fact, that's kind of the main point of them being there. Many of these evil alternate versions of Mark end up dead following the events of Invincible War, but also costing the lives of many of Earth's heroes in the process. The remaining 8 end up being sent to a dead Earth reality, where the Earth there is filled with nothing but dust and hot sand. Stranded here with no food, they are forced to fight and consume one another for nourishment. In the end, only 2 evil Marks remain, Mohawk Mark and Yellow Cape Mark. Yellow Cape Mark could likely be considered the most powerful of all of the evil Marks, as while both have survived this far, Mohawk Mark is even frightened of Yellow Cape Mark. Number 5. Angstrom Levy. Angstrom Levy is really just a man who loves science, but unfortunately he saw Invincible as his opponent and nemesis due to a misunderstanding where he thought that Mark had actually interrupted an important and lifelong experiment in the process, leaving him injured. Levy then sought to destroy Mark because of this, and using his multi-dimensional knowledge and ability to travel to alternate universes using portals, he pulled together an army of evil Marks to help him. In the end, Mark would believe that he killed Levy, but would later learn that Angstrom had actually survived, being patched up by the technicians as well as given cybernetic enhancements that increased his power. Angstrom's weakness, though, would ultimately be his memory, as it wasn't actually Mark who had truly interrupted his experiment, but himself, who removed his multiversal device before his experiment had been complete, because Invincible had showed up but was actually about to die. Levy had actually removed the device, not wanting Mark to be killed. That's why he took it off. This revelation would cause Angstrom to question all of his actions thus far and ultimately surrender to Invincible in the end, defeated by his own lack of memory. Number 4. Robot. While Robot might have the most heroic intentions, you cannot deny that in the end he became a villain himself. In fact, he was only successful as a villain because his intentions were so heroic. His goal? World domination. But why would a hero strive for such an antagonistic goal? Because he knew if he were in charge and completely undisputed as the world's leader, that he could make changes that would greatly improve all lives on Earth. Robot is not actually an AI-powered android. He's a super genius who was originally malformed and unable to survive in the outside world until he created for himself a new, more stable body. He had got a taste for global leadership during his time stranded with Monster Girl in the Flaxen Dimension. Together, they conquered the Flaxen Empire and became its leaders. When they returned to Earth, Robot saw the possibility to turn Earth into a paradise in a similar fashion. But of course, there were many that he would have to get out of the way first. Number 3. Conquest. Conquest is one of the scariest villains out there. Why? Well, because his introduction shook up the narrative. For many, his arrival proved to be one of the scariest of all of the villains in the Invincible universe. This was a guy who enjoyed violence and fighting for the sake of it, and unlike Battle Beast, no fight was ever seen as below him, so he wasn't a villain who would give up. Conquest would fight to the point that his face was unrecognizable and would still come back for more. Initially, it appeared as though he'd killed Mark's partner and love, Adam Eve, which also gave us another shocking, jaw-dropping, fear-riddled moment. Not just for us as readers, but for Mark as Invincible as well. Don't worry, Eve's okay. Spoilers. Number 2. Battle Beast. Battle Beast is one of the most fierce and powerful villains around. His backstory starts off with him being a fearsome warrior and hero who himself was kind of like a guardian of his own planet. And after finding every opponent he came up against disappointing, he decided to leave and traverse the galaxy in search of someone who would be worthy enough to face him in battle and ideally best him. Every world he went, he brought destruction and death to, unable to find the perfect nemesis. No one was strong enough to beat or to defeat him, including Earth's own heroes, who almost died trying. Would Battle Beast ever find someone who was worthy of battling him? Would Battle Beast ever find love? I'm just kidding. He doesn't want to love his nemesis. Although I'm sure there's an element. I feel like there might be an element there. Number 1, Throg. Thrag or Throg or however we're gonna say it. We'll know when he shows up in the animated series. I like the way Throg sounds, so I'm gonna go with that. But if you say Thrag, that is totally cool. Throg has to be up there as one of the most all-time powerful villains, not just in Invincible, but maybe in comics in general, especially in terms of a one-on-one battle. Throg was the villain to defeat one of the strongest villains in the world and lived to tell the tale of it. He ended up fighting Battle Beast, and after days of fighting and both of them being disemboweled, won. Now, of course, Battle Beast did choose to fight disemboweled due to Throg becoming disemboweled during the interim of their fight. But Throg also had to fight like that, and even defeating a disemboweled version of Battle Beast is very impressive. Because hey, that guy is nuts! Throg took Battle Beast's fur or his coat or his skin after the fight and had it turned into like a cape to remind him of his awesome victory. He wore it.
Number 10, the Viltrumite Empire. When he was just a wee Viltrumite, a little Viltrum chap, Nolan's father Argal was taken out by a turncoat before his untimely death. Now, he was the leader of the Viltrumites, but the turncoat believed that violence was no longer the answer. So now Nolan was his young child. He didn't really remember much about his father, plus the Viltrumites hid Nolan's true heritage from the records. So if any villains come around, they don't take this super child, right? So they soon formed the Viltrumite Empire led by the new leader Thrag. And when Nolan was still young, he signed up for the Empire as soon as he could, and his first true victory came soon after. Now, Nolan was so successful in conquering planets that he became commander of his own unit in no time. And before we continue on with this list, over on number 9, if you want to give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. Also, spoiler warning for you guys. Yeah, we're gonna get in deep with the comics, so if you haven't seen the show or you've seen clips of it, you've been warned. You've been warned. Number 9, the final 50. The Scourge virus was created by the coalition of planets on the Viltrumite Empire. Now, the virus wiped out nearly all of the Viltrumites. We see this dark past unfold in issue 66. Now, the virus would weaken these Viltrumites, so the super strength and the invulnerability just out the window, gone. It's pretty nasty stuff too. It was created by Thaddeus, the same turncoat that was responsible for Nolan's father's demise, so a little something there. So eventually there were only 50 Viltrumites left, so the Empire whipped up a new plan. Since the Viltrumites can live for an extremely long time, like thousands of years, every remaining Viltrumite travels now across the universe, and then they pick a planet to infiltrate and then weaken its chance of resisting their inevitable takeover from the Viltrumites. So Nolan chose Earth. He chose us. He met Cecil Stedman, got caught up on human culture, and then took the last name Grayson to blend in. He was settled in on his new home planet. Nolan went from one of the last of his kind to a guy who lives in a nice house with a nice happy wife and a newborn son, Invincible. So Cecil got Nolan set up with his new alias, Omni-Man, with a suit from Art Rosebaum to go along with it. You gotta make it look flashy, right? Omni-Man told everybody this false story of why he was there, they all bought it, and now he stands mighty as Earth's savior. But just as there are supervillains lurking around to beat up, there are also other superheroes. So it didn't take too long for Omni-Man to meet the Guardians of the Globe, but I'll talk about them a little later. I'll save that for a bit. Number 8, the Flaxans. So Mark Grayson, Nolan's son, was of course blessed with the same powers as his father. So when Mark became a teenager, he got pimples, he got a little bit taller, a little bit more moody, and then he got the ability to huck garbage into space. What a fantastic awakening. So Mark discovered that his father was Omni-Man as well when he was 7 years old, and since then he dreamt of being just like him one day, and alas, that day has arrived.
You hear it?
I do.
Get ready. Were you nervous?
A little.
After Art Rosebaum comes through yet again for the young Viltrumite, Invincible and Omni-Man are ready to roll in style. Now the super father and son duo battled the Flaxans first, and they succeeded in stopping them, but when Omni-Man rushed to save a bomb from going off, he was then taken by surprise from a Flaxan. Yeah, he saved them all from the explosion, but it was just a trap. The Flaxans got a hold of Omni-Man, and they took off. Now, I know we got taken, and this is like a dark time in the comics, but I will count this as a win because he saved them all from a big explosion. And besides, did you really think they could keep him for long? Think again. Number 7, the escape. The next issue, Omni-Man returns. Now, this seems to be a normal thing in the household because his wife Debbie wasn't too worried at all. He finally returns, he has a beard, he looks like he's been through hell and back, he shaves up and then he joins the family at the table. One of the biggest victories so far in the comics with Omni-Man happened, but time works differently where the Flaxons are. So Nolan, in fact, spent the last 8 months captured and enslaved, but in an alternate dimension. So it's only been a day back on Earth. Now, a week ago, on Nolan's time, he led a revolt against his captors and regained his superpowers, and today he was finally able to get home with the help of a team of scientists from the rebellion. Now, Debbie's reaction here is priceless. She's like, oh, that's nice, so who's ready for dessert, guys? It's a normal thing in the household, apparently, to disappear for 8 months into another dimension. Okay. Number 6, the Guardians of the Globe. Okay, I said spoiler warnings earlier, but if you skip through the like shout out, first of all, like the video, I'm gonna say it again, and also, big spoilers coming in. You've been warned, final warning. The planet's very own super squad, the Guardians of the Globe, they make their first appearance in issue 7. Now the team is a private organization funded by War Woman and Darkwing, and the other members are Red Rush, the Immortal, Green Ghost, Martian Man, Black Samson, and Aquarius. Nolan didn't join their team, he wrote solo, but he would still often help them save the day. Now if you're new to Invincible Comics and maybe you heard about it or saw it on Amazon Prime, maybe you watched the first episode just to see what it's all about, you were probably pretty shocked at how the end of the first episode played out. Even if you knew about what happens in the comics, this was still shocking. Now this thing happens way earlier in the show, and Invincible creator Robert Kirkman explains this. He says, having it move up, we do get an extra sense of, oh my gosh, Debbie has no clue what's going on with her husband, and how is she going to find out? Is she going to find out? So yeah, Omni-Man straight up destroyed the Guardians of the Globe. He calls them all to meet up, and then one by one, he just picks them off, like with ease, and it's so disturbing. There's no music, it's just intense, there's blood everywhere. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you watch it because that's really the kickoff to a whole series of wild events. Number 5, the Immortal. So the Immortal survives all of this, somehow. So after the Guardians of the Globe beat down, Immortal wakes up later on with the memories of Omni-Man's destruction. Omni-Man saves the day from a giant sea monster, and then the Immortal crashes down to take him on next. He wants answers, as you know, as he should. He doesn't get answers though. Instead, he gets Omni-Man's hands right through his body, cuts him clean in half. The fight doesn't last long at all. What started as Omni-Man saving the day ended up in one of Mark's worst days. Omni-Man tells Invincible the hard truth of his homeworld. We see flashbacks to Omni-Man's early days, taking out monsters alongside other superheroes. It looks good, but then he tells Mark that his mother is basically a pet compared to how long Viltrumites really live. And this day will only get worse. Number 4, he beat Invincible. Issue 12 is, that's just a mess. When Omni-Man first starts to train Mark, he was getting aggressive, but he wasn't pulling back punches per se. But then in this issue, when Invincible finds out Omni-Man's true desires, it gets brutal. He's like, look at this mess, one punch from us and thousands of these weak people lose their lives. They're flying over the city, just knocking buildings down one after another. It's destruction. All the while, harsh truths are also being thrown at Mark. Omni-Man tells him that his mother never meant anything to him, and then bam, they crash through a subway. He says he doesn't give a damn about anybody on this planet, they all mean nothing to him. But before Omni-Man leaves the planet, supposedly for good, he knocks Invincible around some more, this time even harder. Now the only punch he does pull back is right after Mark calls him dad one last time. Number 3, the Thraxons. So Omni-Man leaves, he can't take it anymore, he heads to another planet just to rule them. He wasn't supposed to hang out on Earth, and make a family, he was supposed to be conquering the universe. So next he went to Thraxa, thinking maybe he'll take over that planet, and then maybe his sentence will be lessened when the Viltrumites eventually find him. Now their lifespan on this planet is only 9 months, so he easily becomes the ruler, having lived thousands of years. No destruction needed, just words will do the trick today. And they're like, hey man, we believe you, planet's yours, cheers, awesome, bye. Number 2, another family. Another planet conquered, another family, right? Let's keep this victory train rolling. So Invincible shows up now to see Omni-Man in his new glory, and he breaks down. He asks his father, he begs him to come back home. But Omni-Man is now comfy. He has a new mate, Andressa, and a new child. The child has purple skin, so the Viltrumites will consider that a genetic flaw, because they're So when the Viltrumites come, Omni-Man and his first son, Invincible, defend the Thraxans. Little turntables, that's cool. So Mark takes Andressa and his half-brother now to safety while Omni-Man continues the fight. Now Lucan attempts to capture Mark, but Omni-Man doesn't let that happen, does he? Nope. He saves the day, even on a different world. How lovely. And finally, number 1, another escape. So Norman ends up getting captured by the Viltrumites and put into a super cell. And while he's there, he meets up with old pal Alan the alien, who was voiced by Seth Rogen in the show. Alan and him plan a breakout, and this happens easily when Alan punches a hole through the prison, and now, well, you know how space works, everyone gets sucked outside. Now we're outside, let's fight. So a Viltrumite shows up to stop them, but the pair both prepare a mighty punch at the same time, and now there's pieces of that guy's brain just floating amongst the stars. But the fact that there are only a limited amount of Viltrumites left, they figure they can't hang out and celebrate this victory.
Number 10. Force Bolts. A power that is maybe less commonly used and is more on the offensive side are Adam Eve's Force Bolts. She can create these out of energy channeled using her powers to transmute matter. Adam Eve has the capability to channel this matter into a straight up energy or force bolt that looks similar to kind of like a javelin or like a pink lightning bolt. The color that most of her powers tend to manifest as are pink, which also reminds me a lot of another powerful hero, the telepathic and telekinetic Omega level mutant Jean Grey from Marvel. Number 9. Force Shields. One of the more obvious ones that you likely only didn't know if you were just getting into Invincible is Adam Eve's force field powers. Still, these powers are kind of her go-to and are important to mention because of that, which is why I'm including them even though they aren't really as obscure as some of the other ones that we're going to list here. Adam Eve can generate force fields to bounce back projectiles or protect allies, friends, or civilians. She also sometimes uses her force fields as a wall to basically hold back an enemy's army or potentially the effects of a natural disaster. This is one of the powers she exhibits that likely makes fans think of another powerful woman in comics, Invisible Woman, Sue Storm of the Fantastic Four. Side note, apparently all powers make me think of female superheroes from Marvel. Number 8. Matter manipulation. Adam Eve can manipulate matter on a subatomic level. We saw a clear example of her abilities to manipulate matter when she was having an argument with her parents in the animated series. Frustrated at her father, worrying over how dangerous her job was, and wanting a normal life for her, she showed her parents how powerful and capable she was, using her powers to rearrange the elements of the room and the structure of her family home. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want, I don't know, more Adam Eve lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 7. Force Bubbles. This is kind of like her force field power or force shield power, but here instead Eve can use her power to make bubbles or cubes. These encasings can be used to protect people like her shields. Sometimes while flying she uses these powers to taxi or move others around with her who themselves cannot fly. When Mark is actually without his powers, this is how she transports Mark to a huge comic book convention, which honestly looks pretty comparable to San Diego Comic-Con to me. She carries him around in a cube, but she can also use this power offensively, creating bubbles around her enemies' heads and choosing to keep oxygen out of those bubbles. We see her do this in the fight against the Flaxans in episode 2 of season 1 of the Invincible animated series, causing a few Flaxan soldiers to actually pass out. The cool thing about these bubbles is that Eve actually has complete control over them. She chooses what can and cannot pass through them, if they're porous or not, and how thick or how thin they are. This power is really cool, like her shields, because of how much control she can exert over them. In fact, I think when she does the bubble thing with the Flaxans, they can actually put their hands in the bubble, but I don't think they can get oxygen through the bubble, which is interesting. Number 6. Food alteration. Obviously, one of the things that Adam Eve could also do with her powers was use them to manipulate the atomic structure and makeup of food. In fact, this was how she first discovered her powers. In her origin story as told in issue 25 of Invincible, we learned that a young Samantha Wilkins, after having a fight with her parents at the dinner table, was sent with said dinner to her room. She didn't want to eat her chicken. Instead, she wanted a cheeseburger. And just as she shouted those words aloud alone in her room, the chicken transmuted into a cheeseburger before her very eyes. Eve can use her powers to make healthy food unhealthy food, or vice versa, by completely rearranging the atoms that make it up on a subatomic level. Matter manipulation means you can basically do a lot of things. It's a pretty OP power. Number 5. Telekinesis. This for Adam Eve is kind of just another fancy way of saying flight, but hey, this power is an important one, so although it might not be lesser known that she can fly, it's one that I think we need to mention on her powers list. Besides, for Adam Eve, her flight powers are likely less telekinesis based and more have to do with her ability to manipulate the atoms that make up air, allowing her to propel herself using her powers, which kind of work more as like thrusters to move her through the sky. With telekinesis, however, Adam Eve can also use her mind to control and manipulate objects around her, causing them to levitate. Adam Eve can be seen causing objects to levitate as early on as when she was first learning how to use her powers during her origin story featured in issue 25. Number 4. Costume creation. That thing where Eve mentions that she designed her costume herself in her fight against Doc Seismic in season 1 of the animated series, that's actually really true. Adam Eve didn't just design her costume though. Oh no. Technically she kind of makes her costume too, every time she has to put it on. And even better, she doesn't technically even have to change outfits to do that. Instead, Adam Eve kind of has like a magical girl type scenario going on. Using her matter manipulation abilities, Eve also possesses the power to turn any piece of clothing into anything else that she wants, meaning that she can just transform her everyday clothes into her superhero costume. She even at one point uses her transmutation powers to give Mark a revitalized, fresh, new, and clean costume when the one that he's wearing is covered in blood. No phone booth required for Adam Eve. Number 3. Unlimited wealth. I mean, if she wanted it. And of course, at the consequence of probably causing great inflation to the market if she did. Which is probably why she doesn't do that. When Eve and Mark finally get engaged in issue 102, Eve is the one to help Mark with the proposal by providing the ring, as they both feel they're ready to make that commitment to one another. She creates the ring she always wanted, just as Mark is talking himself sort of into proposing to Eve. Of course, he feels like he is kind of messing it all up, and he doesn't even have a ring. Which is why it's so perfect while as he's talking, she makes one. They're evidently both very much on the same page here. This means, of course, that Eve could make any number of unlimited valuables, likely, if she wanted to, but I guess Eve is just content with what she has and happy to work for and earn her money doing what she loves, trying to help other people. She really just needs money to live comfortably and provide for the people she cares about. That's it. Other than that, she's like, I'm good, I just want to help people. Number 2, genius level scientific intellect. Something you might not know about Adam Eve is that she's actually super gifted when it comes to her knowledge of science. Her intelligence manifested at a young age, with some of her first words being shown in the comics to be the molecular structure of an apple. Although her parents wouldn't recognize their baby's inherent intelligence and dismiss this as just childish babbling as it didn't really make any sense to them, they just thought baby Samantha was trying to say the words that they were asking for, but struggling and instead kind of, spouting sounds and gibberish as most babies do. From there, her natural scientific understanding and knowledge would only grow. However, her natural brilliance would remain exclusively based in science. She went to a gifted school and they were like, oh, she'll be able to do all these other subjects too. And then she was like, I'm only good at science. That's my thing. Number 1, immortality. This is a power that even Eve didn't know she had. We don't find out about it until the very end of the Invincible main series. In issue 144, Mark calls their daughter, Tara, home to reveal that her mother and the love of his life, Samantha Wilkins, aka Adam Eve as we all know her, is finally dying. We see a very elderly and frail Adam Eve, but just as she seemingly dies, something crazy happens. A bright light kind of engulfs her, appearing to emanate from her own body. Bathed in a blinding light, a change begins to happen, and when the light is gone, it seems that Eve has re-emerged, alive and well and back to the same healthy condition and appearance she had at her adult prime. Eve is just as surprised as everyone else as she reflects that, unbeknownst to her, she must also be immortal. Mark responds with, rad.
Number 10, his childhood. Okay, like most superheroes, Rex Sloan's childhood was pretty awful, I'm not gonna lie. He was born into a poor family where he had to steal just to get by. He was in no means a bad kid, he had to steal food, not even wallets or anything. He had to steal food in order for his family to eat. It was troublesome. Regardless, he was skilled. Even before the whole superhero stuff, he had some tactics. So he was doing okay on this particular day. He was outrunning a store clerk and a police officer all at the same time until a concussion grenade stopped him dead in his tracks. All of a sudden, this man approaches and asks Rex why he's stealing, and Rex explains, I have to, man. He's like, my mother's gonna starve if I don't steal this food. And even saying that makes this gentleman laugh. He keeps laughing and he laughs and he walks away laughing, which is, you're like, okay, it's dark. Why was he doing that? No motivational speech, no hand on the shoulder, nothing like that. Okay. So later we see this man, but we don't see him until Christmas. He returns to Rex and his family. He brings steak. He introduces himself as Radcliffe while the family eats. They're having a great time. But he comes bearing more than medium rare gifts. He comes with an offer. They don't have much, but there's one thing that the Sloane family can give Radcliffe. Their son Rex, of course. So the father sees a money sign and immediately he makes the deal, and just like that, they don't have a son anymore. Rough. Number 9, his new home. So after a quick handshake, Rex Sloane is now Radcliffe's. The pair travel back to his headquarters, and Rex sees his new room, and let's just say it's a little nicer than his previous setup. So Rex was informed that Radcliffe wasn't totally honest with his parents. See, as Rex began training almost immediately, time kept going on. Now Rex is getting his ass kicked during these exercises, but finally, it's Operation Day, and Rex is in no way ready for what's about to come. Before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a like, the old thumbs up, not that one for sure, that would be great. It really helps our channel out a lot. You're the best. Thank you so much for supporting. Right back into this list. I don't like wasting your time. Let's do it. Number 8, his new powers. So when Rex wakes up, he's told the do's and the don'ts. Okay, this is where the name Rexplode comes into play. So if he flexes a little bit, if he does the old Rex flex, the charging process will begin. Now the charge is only effective on inorganic objects. So plants, animals, humans, they're not gonna explode per se. But all he has to do is apply a small amount of kinetic energy, a little boop, and that energy creates a mighty explosion. Now normally that would be enough to save the day, but the injections also gave Rex super strength as well as super reflexes. You know, so he's not totally weak. Now the density of his skin as well was increased, so those explosions won't hurt him any of those times. Now he tries his new powers on the robot, and it works like a charm. His head just engulfs in flames, so now he's eager to do more, however. And Radcliffe tells him that he doesn't have to wait too long to do so. Number 7, batter up. So Rex was soon tasked to carry out various assassinations, robberies, and of course, well, arson. It's probably the easiest one for Rex. He was loving it, honestly. I mean, compared to his last family, at least now he was getting the time of day, right? Even if he was, blowing things up with baseballs and causing mischief. So he feels bad, Rex. He voices his opinion on this whole operation to Radcliffe, but Radcliffe just spins his words against him, right? He reminds Rex the first time that they met when Rex explained to him that his crimes were outweighed by his family's hunger. So Radcliffe now tells Rexy Boy that the world too is starving, and these particular people were just a cup of noodles. Yeah, those people are the worst apparently. Who wants to be a cup of noodles? Am I right? Hey, people wearing noodle stuff and, people wanting to be Mr. Noodles, it's not a bad thing per se, right? Yeah. So Radcliffe gifts Rex a moped, and Rex was just shocked that he even remembered his birthday. How sweet. So Radcliffe gently reminds Rex that his family sold him for a steak dinner and that this is now where he truly belongs. So Rex is like, yeah, you're right, that's cool. So Rex was then sent on a mission to destroy the Pentagon, which is kind of a big deal, no? On the way there, that's where he met Number 6, Adam Eve. So while Rex was en route to blow the Pentagon up to smithereens, he saw another advanced individual, this one named Adam Eve. Now she's one of the main characters in the comic and of course in the show, and he saw her as she was stopping a burglar. Now at first his initial reaction was to attack her, right? Because that's his job. He's sent to throw objects at people and then they Rexplode. So he grabbed a rock instinctively, but then Adam Eve was like, hey now, that's really no way to treat a lady, especially a lady this cute. So he's like, alright, let's talk. So Rex connected the dots and he's like, okay, so you must be a superhero. So the guy I'm working for must be a super villain or a bad guy, right? So maybe you can help me out here. They're interrupted when that super villain gets back on his feet and resumes the fight. So Rex is told to get out of Dodge, but he insists on sticking around, having awesome seats to the show and all. So when Kilcannon takes aim at Adam Eve, Rex tosses a pebble at him, threatening that he'll throw the rest of the brick next. So Kilcannon fixes his aim on Rex, and then Rex catches Kilcannon's shot. So after that pretty much did the trick. He fired that blast back with his own Rexplosions, and then he was toast. He didn't make it after that. He threw up on himself too. It was kind of violent. And then they get back to their conversation, and Rex needs Adam Eve's help because he's now realizing that he works for the bad guys, and maybe the birthday mopeds are just distractions after all. Who knew? Number 5. Moving day. So the next day, Rex figured, okay, it's time for some change. I gotta get out of here. But first, he heads to the Pentagon, and instead of leaving casualties, he instead leaves a note for Cecil Stedman. Now, after he gets back home, he begins to pack up for the next chapter in his life. But of course, Radcliffe returns, and he's a little displeased at the change of heart. He yells at Rex for abandoning his mission. He slaps him across the face, insults him numerous times, grabs his neck, continuing the insults while he lectures him. So Rex naturally wanted this to stop, because nobody wants that to happen to them ever. So he he naturally pushed Radcliffe's face away, but Radcliffe happened to be wearing glasses, so he accidentally charged those up while he was doing so. Remember, inorganic material goes Rexplode. So Radcliffe touches the glasses, and in turn, well, he doesn't have a head anymore. His head is gone. It doesn't exist. He didn't make it. So no more Radcliffe, which is fine. He wasn't the nicest guy. In fact, Rex decides at that point, you know what? No more facility. He destroys the entire place, and with nowhere else to go, he heads back to Eve's place, explains the situation, and the two finally partner up with a costume upgrade, of course, for Rex. And they take down the salvaging team that was after Rex afterward. What a duo. Number 4. Teen Team. The Teen Team is led by Robot, and they're going against the Mauler twins at first, and they of course came out on top. They're a pretty kick-ass team. Now the new friends split up for the next few missions, so Rex, Sloan, and Duplicate were teamed up for one mission, while Eve and team leader Robot went on another, with this new guy named Invincible. I don't know, he's kind of important in the show. So the missions were going well on the Teen Team, and the Robot announced that he was trying out for the Guardians of the Globe, a bigger, larger scaled team. But he couldn't work both at the same time, so he broke the news that the Teen Team would be disbanded. How sad. Now this is when the relationship started to change, because Rex certainly didn't help. He actually cheated on Eve with Duplicate, and it wasn't Kate, it was multiple copies of Duplicate, so it's all bad. So he's flirting with her now in front of Eve. It's not looking good, so eventually the two fly out and have this big talk, and then Rex actually admits that he feels bad. He's saying that it doesn't have to be this way. He's being genuine, but his life gets even more crazy when he was asked to join the Guardians of the Globe. Number 3, the Guardians of the Globe. On his first mission as a new member of the Guardians, Rex had to stop an invasion from the Flaxons. And after Eve is hit with one of their weapons, Rex comes to the rescue and catches her. I said rescue and I didn't even mean to, and I'm gonna keep it. Invincible takes out their wristband and prevents them from aging, and after that, Rex just finishes them all off with explosive BBs. Now in the show, this is a pretty wild turning point because Rex and other Guardians attacked Titan while he was taking over Machine Head's corporation. And then Battle Beast entered the fight and almost took out everybody. He actually severely injured Black Samson and Bulletproof, but Rex was fine. He got out of there, you know, kind of okay. He did a bunch of missions afterwards, and they all went well for the most part, and then once Rex got back to base and asked Monster Girl where Kate was, upon closer inspection, Kate was now having an affair with the Immortal. How the turntables. So we got some advice from Robot, because, you know, of course, the best advice ever, and during this conversation, Robot comforts Rex with that hand on his shoulder. How sweet, what a moment. Number 2, the clone. Now when Robot put his hand on Rex, Rex jumped in pain. He asked Robot what just happened. That felt kind of weird randomly. And then Robot tells Rex, hey man, I'm a robot, I probably hit a nerve, you know, sorry. Not the softest hands, it happens a lot I'm sure. Turns out Robot had plans of his own to grow, and he needed Rex's DNA for a new body, for a clone. So Robot wanted to be a real boy, so after the Mauler twins set their cloning equipment up, they began putting his mind into the Rex body. Now after the procedure was complete, Robot tells them, psych, you're not getting paid, you're actually going right back to prison. Hey, look at that, who knew? So he tells the team, and Rex is of course in shock, and Robot tells Monster Girl that she's the reason that he decided to get himself a new body, a new Rex body, because Rex was pleasing to her eye. And Robot doesn't love Monster Girl or anything like that, but when Monster Girl hears this, she asks Rex if he wants to hang sometime. So it's like, oh, you think I'm cute because you think I think he's cute? Oh, you wanna hang out sometime? It's cool. But then Robot whispers under his breath that phase 2 of his plan is well underway. So that's pretty mysterious, I'd say. Number 1, another upgrade. So during the sequence attack on our planet, Shrinking Ray and Kate weren't allowed to help out because their bodies were at risk of being used as a host, which is a fair call. So the remaining team members took the battle to space to the Lizard League, and at first they had it under control. They took out the Salamander first and then Iguana, but that pesky Komodo dragon ended up taking out our very own Shrinking Ray and Duplicate and her clone. It was a bad day. So Rex had to bring out the big guns. Something had to happen. This was not okay. So Rex ended up losing his hand while he was putting an explosive in Komodo Dragon's head. So he thought he saved the day until King Lizard pulls out of nowhere, pulls a blaster out, and shoots Rex in the head. It was insane. Now King Lizard fell unconscious, and Rex was then able to heal from his wounds, barely made it out alive, but he got a robotic hand in place of the one that he sacrificed. So at the end of the day, it was another cool upgrade. And then after that, he started to take his job and his role on the team much more seriously.
Number 10, created by. Robert Kirkman and Cory Walker are the creators of Invincible, with Ryan Audley also helping to create a lot of what you see as well, providing much of the artwork to come as the comic series developed. When Robert and Cory first came up with the character and the design for Mark, Kirkman actually didn't expect the reaction that he would get from fans in terms of Mark's ambiguous appearance and perceived diversity. Many fans wrote in about how they loved how Mark appeared to be a hero who represented them or their culture. Kirkman said in a recent interview with Washington Post that he could see how some might see Mark as being Filipino or Italian, but that even Mexican fans wrote in about how they loved how Mark appeared to be Mexican. When it came to do the show, having seen how much diversity mattered to the fans, they really wanted to solidify that even more in the world, and so Debbie became Asian American of Korean descent, with Mark becoming biracial. Number 9. First appearance. We all know that Mark makes his first appearance in regards to his own series in Invincible issue number 1 from 2003, but before that he also appeared in a preview within an issue of Image Comics' Savage Dragon series. Mark appears in issue 102, and there we see him defeating the villain who'd turn out to be his physics teacher, who hated malls and was obsessed with explosives. Then we flash back to 4 months prior and learn that his father is the hero Omni-Man. Issue 102 of Savage Dragon is part of the 1993 series and was released in August of 2002. The first issue of Invincible would be released in January of 2003. Number 8. He's a nerd. Why do we all love Mark Grayson so much? Maybe because we identify with him. Mark is also a huge comic book nerd like the rest of us. He is big into superhero fandoms, and even at one point in the series goes to a signing for one of his favorite comics in an attempt to cheer himself up after losing his powers. His favorite comic seems to be Science Dog, which is also featured in the animated series as well. And fun fact, that was actually the original pitch that Walker and Kirkman were going to do for Image, because they were basically tasked with creating a superhero for them. And they were like, Science Dog! They said, no, but we like you, so try again. But I love that they still found a home for Science Dog in their own series. Number 7. Viltrumite heritage. Mark was born a Viltrumite, and with that comes a lot of responsibility, as his dad, Omni-Man, likes to constantly remind him throughout the first season of the animated series. But just how much responsibility are we talking about here? While initially Mark is led to believe that his father is a hero and that the Viltrumites lived in peace, harmony, and paradise, who sent their own people to other planets to help protect them and act as their guardians, he later learns that this isn't exactly true. The Viltrumites did send their race to other worlds to bring a sort of peace there, but only so that they could mate with the race that inhabited that world to strengthen and expand the Viltrumite Empire, conquer that world, and then later destroy it. Mark's powers come from his Viltrumite heritage, which actually override his human genes over time, so despite being part Viltrumite, at the same time, he's also kind of all Viltrumite. Number 6. Powers. As I said, Mark gets his power from his Viltrumite heritage, meaning that his powers are similar to other Viltrumites like Omni-Man. Mark has enhanced strength, durability, endurance, speed, he can fly, is capable of interstellar travel, and is basically immortal. And, well, invincible. His opponents have to be massively strong and skilled to cause harm to him, and his aging is dramatically slower. Viltrumites are known to live thousands of years, with their aging slowing to almost a halt once they've reached full-grown maturity. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about the Invincible universe and characters, please let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 5. Costume. In the animated series, we get a whole scene about Mark getting his costume. His dad, Nolan, aka Omni-Man, takes him to meet the designer of his and many other heroes' costumes, Art. Art is actually voiced by Mark Hamill, by the way, and he actually ends up trying to pawn off a costume that just won't sell to Mark, but Mark isn't crazy about the colors. Prior to this, Mark was wearing his own homemade costume. When Mark does find a color scheme that he likes, you might notice something interesting about his new look. Of course, if you aren't familiar with the comics and the publisher, then maybe you missed it. Mark's costume is meant to resemble the letter I. For Invincible? Well, within the story, yes, this is likely the reasoning, but outside of the canon, the letter I design is meant to represent an important logo, the Image logo. Image is the publisher of Invincible, and Robert Kirkman envisioned that Invincible had the potential to be part of an ongoing superhero line and story for Image Comics, even after he was done writing it. Invincible was part of Image's Skybound imprint originally. Number 4. Costume change. Mark starts off with that iconic costume, but in the comics, he later changes his look. This happens after he parts ways with Cecil Stedman. Why does he part ways with Cecil? Or Cecil, if you like to say it's Cecil. Really, I think either one's fine. Well, he parts ways after he learns that Cecil has discovered Invincible's weakness due to his Viltrumite heritage. That's right, he knows about his sensitive ears, and his complex equilibrium, attempting to exploit this new knowledge. Mark leaves Cecil to get help from the Guardians, who do help him, and then all kind of subsequently quit as a result. To signify his newfound freedom from Cecil, Mark gets a new costume that is similar to his old look, but darker with a blue and black color scheme. Number 3. Adam Eve. The love of his life in the comics ends up being Adam Eve, and I wouldn't be surprised if the animated series also went that route. Then again, I also wouldn't be surprised if they decided to change it up on us and maybe go in the opposite direction with Amber becoming his main squeeze this time around. Who knows? I feel like they are trying to change things and keep us on our toes. Amber in the comics is Mark's girlfriend. The two inevitably break up, however, after Mark basically acknowledges that it's not going to work out, that he and Eve both have feelings for each other at this point, and that he's been, I guess, kind of a partner to Amber. I love the transition from his and Amber's relationship to his and Adam Eve's because it just feels really real. There's no tragedy, no epic betrayal, no one gets stuffed in a fridge. It's just a nice ending and a great new beginning. Mark and Eve would go on to become partners in business as well in love, and the two would also end up having a daughter together, Tara. Number 2, the other Invincible. Another character would later take on Mark's mantle temporarily and also fill in for Mark from time to time when he wasn't available. Bulletproof. Bulletproof is Zandale Randolph, and you might recognize his costume. After Mark and Adam Eve started Invincible Inc. together, Zandale would assist with the new company. When Mark was off-world fighting in the Viltrumite War, Zandale took a more active role, even filling in for Mark, wearing a version of the Invincible costume and changing up his look to make himself look a little bit more like Mark. He took up the mantle of Invincible temporarily. He would also fill in for Mark later on and eventually would take up the mantle more permanently, meaning that there actually was a time when there were 2 Invincibles on Earth, as both he and Mark operated under that name at the same time. Bulletproof's abilities allow him to absorb energy, meaning that it's really hard to hurt him, as even a kinetic energy attack like a punch or a kick just basically gets absorbed by him. Number 1, voiced by... In the animated series, Mark is voiced by Steven Yeun, someone who you might also recognize for his involvement in another of Kirkman's adapted series. Steven also played fan-favorite zombie apocalypse survivor Glenn Rhee in the Walking Dead live-action series from season 1 till the character's demise in season 7. Robert Kirkman said they went after Steven to provide the voice of Mark because he is such a talented actor, and that Kirkman knew that he had what it took when it came to doing justice to Mark's ongoing evolution throughout the series, based on his experience working with him on Walking Dead. Kirkman cited how much Glenn Rhee went through in the show, and how well Steven did with that character's evolution, which was what made him the perfect pick to provide the voice for Mark Grayson. Number 10, Amber. On part 1 of this list, we talked about Adam Eve, aka Samantha Wilkins, widely accepted as the love of Mark's life. In fact, I feel like Mark has even referred to her on that level before in the comics. But before there was Samantha, there was Amber. Amber was Mark's girlfriend in high school. Amber, Bennett, and Mark would date for a while in the comics, and Mark would even reveal his secret identity to her. This has also happened in the show, where Amber's character also appears, but was also redesigned to add a bit more diversity, which Kirkman has stressed in interviews was very important to him when it came to the animated adaptation. I freaking love Amber's character in the show. She is such a badass. In the end, it didn't work out between Mark and Amber because, well, Mark realized being a hero made him a terrible boyfriend to Amber, and he also realized he was in love with Adam Eve. The two broke up, but on amicable terms, and even stayed friends afterwards. Later on, Amber would be mistreated by her partner Gary. Amber tells Mark about this, and he actually ends up threatening Gary, scaring him supposedly straight. Amber ends up being thankful to Mark for his help. I just love that personally they remain friends, and that the two still care for one another even after their relationship is over. They just want the best for one another. It's all like a very mature way to move on from a relationship, and I feel like a more realistic thing. Number 9, his dad's real motivation. During the season 1 finale of the Invincible animated series, it's revealed to us that Omni-Man is more complex than he seems. Well, it's revealed why he's so complex, I guess I should say. We kind of already got a sense for his complexity when we saw him kill all the Guardians of the Globe. Here we learn that he is more villain than hero, or really is sort of a bit of both, depending on how you look at it. He revealed that his true purpose for coming to Earth was to conquer it, and that he expects Mark to help him in doing so. The Viltrumite Empire seems to have a history of conquering other worlds. Their planet and culture focused on making their bloodline and people stronger by fighting against one another until only the strongest Viltrumites were left. They also became even more invested in exploring and conquering other worlds when they were exposed to the Scourge virus, a virus created by the Coalition of Planets, and more specifically, the Viltrumite traitor Thaddeus, who was not down with all the conquering that they were doing, apparently. This virus wiped out most of the Viltrumite population, which meant they needed to find new worlds where they could resettle and mate in order to build their population back up again. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, you want more like it, be sure to show us by giving it a thumbs up. Number 8. Anissa. For a time, the Viltrumites actually attempt to repopulate their race, hiding undercover on the planet Earth, disguised as humans. They are meant to be seeking out humans to mate with so that they can help repopulate the race. It's their mission. However, one Viltrumite, Anissa, can't seem to find anyone who meets her standards on Earth. She thinks mating with humans is kind of below her, especially as she never really wanted to mate with anyone to begin with in her own personal life. So, it's pretty tricky for her. She has, however, become acquainted with Mark and sees him as a good potential mate, as he at least happens to have Viltrumite DNA, and it's also implied that she finds him pretty attractive. Mark, however, just wants to be with Eve and actually refuses Anissa's advances. Number 7. Trauma. Despite Mark telling Anissa that he's not interested in her and that he only wants to be with Eve, she doesn't listen. She tries seducing and even fighting Mark, trying to get him to submit and telling him it's pointless to resist her as she will just take what she wants if she has to. Mark fights back but doesn't want to hurt Anissa and eventually finds himself restrained by her. She forces herself on him, leaving Mark traumatized after the experience. Anissa would eventually come to regret doing this to Mark and later tries to apologize to him. While Mark eventually does forgive her in his own way, he was left traumatized by this experience. It also happened while Rex was in the process of taking the world and while Mark and Eve were expecting their first child together. It would take a long while for Mark to share his experience and to heal from his trauma. Number 6. Scourge virus. Mark himself at one point ends up being infected by the Scourge virus, and this is a newer strain meant to dominate even the strongest of immunities and the strongest of Viltrumites, or in Mark's case, half Viltrumites. Fortunately, he got some help from Dinosaurus, and Mark would eventually recover, though he would temporarily lose his powers because of the Scourge virus, even completely busting his arm during a fight in issue 91, realizing the virus had affected his durability. Number 5. He's royalty. It's later revealed that Nolan is actually the son of Argel, the former leader of the Viltrumite Empire, or Argel, who was killed by Thaddeus. Once he learns of this, Throg, who is the current ruler and grand regent of the now small empire, decides he cannot let Nolan live. He attempts to kill Nolan, but in the end is stopped by fellow Viltrumites who, once learning of Nolan's true heritage, think of him as their true ruler. Eventually, Nolan is made the emperor of the Viltrumite Empire, meaning that Mark is the heir to the empire and basically a Viltrumite prince. And of course, later on, Mark himself would become the emperor of the Viltrum Empire. Number 4. Marky. Marky, or Marcus, is Mark's child with Anissa. Yep, she did end up conceiving a child by him. And as I said, she did attempt to return and apologize to Mark, but she was unable to get to him as Eve, who knew of what she did to Mark and Nolan, basically held her off. Anissa would go on to find a human mate in Scott Murphy and have a daughter, Molly, with him. However, Anissa would die protecting Eve during the Viltrumite War and would actually never be able to tell Mark about his son because of this. Instead, it was Scott, Marcus's adoptive father and Anissa's mate, who told Mark about him. Mark would occasionally visit with Marky, accepting him as part of his family, but would inevitably leave him behind when the Viltrumites left Earth to venture out to space, becoming heroes to distant worlds, as his dad years ago had originally claimed that they were. Mark told Marcus he'd need to stay behind to be a hero on Earth, a sort of white lie to ensure that Marcus wouldn't have to leave his father, Scott, who did not want to go to space. Marcus would eventually take up Mark's mantle of Invincible, and it's implied he eventually left Earth searching space for Mark, who he had come to resent, believing that Mark had actually abandoned him on Earth. Which, I mean, Mark kinda did, but Also, he was like, Marcus's place is on Earth, so yeah. Number 3, Tara. Tara is the daughter of Invincible and Adam Eve. She would get her name while Mark and Samantha journeyed to Telescria, or Telescria? They gave her the name Tara after they had left the planet Earth to mark their new beginnings and in memory of their history on the planet Earth. The name Tara is chosen because Mark and Eve think of her as their own little piece of Earth. Aw, so cute. Tara would end up growing to be strong like her father and her mother, but would ultimately become more rebellious as she grew, eventually breaking away from her dad for a time, but returning to her family when her mother was believed to be on her deathbed, dying finally of old age. Or was she? Number 2, his weakness. On part 1 of our list, we talked about Mark's power set and how it came from his Viltrumite heritage. And now we're going to dive into something else that also comes from his Viltrumite heritage, his weakness. Like all Viltrumites, Mark's weakness is his ears. Viltrumites' equilibrium is what gives them their powers of flight, which is all achieved through their very complex inner workings of their ears. What this means is that their ears are actually more sensitive than most. This grants them super hearing powers, but can also mean that discombobulating a Viltrumite, assuming you have some superhuman strength backing you up, is a really good way to disable them, at least temporarily. Number 1, his death? On live television, no less. Dinosaurus was broadcast as he completely eviscerated Mark. But why? Well, all was explained in issue 100. It turned out that that wasn't really Mark, but a lifeless yet convincing cloned copy of him. Dinosaurus ended up creating the clone thinking it could be of use, but then saw an opportunity to get rid of Mark, killing him so that he could be free from his old persona, free from the responsibilities of being a hero, free from the judgments of the world, free to join Dinosaurus in saving the world. After swapping Mark out with a clone using his new teleportation capability, Dinosaurus exposed Mark to a frequency that basically leaves Viltrumites in a comatose-like state, due to the complex workings of their ears and their hearing sensitivity, which we talked about on the last point. Eventually, Mark would escape Dinosaurus, killing the complex character at his own request, and return home to his family. But for a while, the world, his family, and his friends would think that he really was dead.
Number 10, his origins. Battle Beast, aka Thok, made his first appearance in Invincible issue 19. He's introduced by Machine Head as a scourge of twin galaxies. He says he likes to take trophies, so make sure your neck doesn't meet one of his weapons at the wrong angle. Now, he looks intimidating already, but where is this guy from? What exactly is his motive? Well, he's a Leonine who has conquered 1,000 worlds. He was once the planetary guardian, and similar to Omni-Man's homeworld, it was full of fighting and violence. So he grew up kind of getting used to those elements. And also he grew up getting quite good at it too. He ended up becoming the savior of his homeworld, and he turned it into a utopia. But a beast like Thok isn't just going to hang out at a spa all day and awe at the statues that are built for him. No, he needs to be the fiercest of all the worlds, not just one. Which is what drove him to set his sights on other planets to conquer, even stopping, of course, by Earth. And before we continue on with this video about Battle Beast, guys, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be lovely. We're working from home. We're doing our best to keep the channel running, so your support really does help us out quite a bit. Thank you so much. Now let's get right back into this list. Number 9, his powers. Battle Beast looks quite different. He's a Leonine. He's actually the most powerful of the species, and he doesn't skip leg day either. Being a Leonine, he's got quite the power in his legs. This allows him to leap at all these great distances with just one hop. Instead of a hop, skip, and jump, he's just hop and then takes your head off. He can take on several Viltrumites as he possesses superhuman reflexes and endurance. Now, his fangs aren't just for show, although he could probably scare away a few foes with a crooked smile. His fangs can pierce superhuman skin, and his bite even outpowers the bite of Dinosaurus. Add a little super speed to the mix, and this Leonine is the opposite of the cowardly lion. He's devastating when it comes to hand-to-hand combat, although you might not even get that close, as Battle Beast is well equipped with swords, axes, and most importantly, his mace. Now, we see him use this mace in episode 5 of Invincible, and he seems more than comfortable with it. Number 8, the Guardians of the Globe. In that same episode, it's revealed that Battle Beast is working alongside Machine Head. Now, he wanted to come to Earth and test worthy opponents, and when Titan and Invincible were trying to stop Machine Head, he came in and just laid out the new Guardians of the Globe. The other Guardians were fighting Machine Head and his evil henchmen, while Bulletproof and Black Samson tried to stop Battle Beast themselves. Now, they barely came out of this alive. Barely. Battle Beast was not impressed. He actually didn't think it was a fair fight to begin with. He looked at us like insects of Earth. Too easy, no problem. So he teleported away on to the next one. Number 7, imprisonment. So once he left Earth, Battle Beast was taken as a prisoner by a race that was also conquered by the Viltrumites. So Alan the alien started a riot, and in doing so, he freed Battle Beast. His original idea was to free Nolan, but, well, we'll take what we can get at this point. Battle Beast then offered to help Alan because, well, this leads to more fighting. This leads to more conquering. You can't do much in a prison cell, so he's like, yeah, I'll take what I can get. Let's do it. So Battle Beast starts taking out all these Viltrumites. He's pumped. Now he just gets to punch people. Finally, he's been cooped. So meanwhile, Alan punches a hole in the spaceship, and now we got an unstoppable breakout crew. Now Omni-Man is free, and Battle Beast just wants more blood. Meanwhile, Alan the alien is like, damn, I didn't know I could punch that strong. Sweet. Number 6, the Viltrumite War. Battle Beast was later discovered by a coalition search party, just frozen in space. Still angry, but frozen nonetheless. He joined the ranks of the coalition of planets for a bit. Now, he didn't want to admit that he was helping, but he was for sure helping in a way. Eventually, he was needed for a final Viltrumite battle, so the gang headed to Viltrum, where en route they were ambushed by a Viltrumite woman. Battle Beast again relied on his trusty mace and started a fight, and it didn't take long before other Viltrumites came to join in on the fun. He fought everybody, and he was just winning. Now eventually, the planet was wiped out, and when he attacked Thrag, he was just tossed to the side. Perhaps he's met his match. Number 5, the new mission. After the Viltrumite War passed, Battle Beast had recovered and continued down his path of destruction. So he arrived to an unknown planet, slaughtered the leader, all the guards too, just done, easily defeated. Then Space Racer arrived to the planet with Alan. They requested his assistant back to Telescria, but right before he leaves the bloodstained planet, an alien woman begs to come along with him. So he's like, sure, join the fun, whatever, let's do it. So he does, and the group arrives back to Telescria. So while this alien lady was waiting in the lobby of the Coalition headquarters, Alan breaks down the Viltrumites to an impatient Battle Beast. Alan also explains the exiled Thrag who we ran into earlier, which Battle Beast is very excited to come across. He gives an evil smile and accepts the new mission. Number 4, he can fight for days. In comics, it's pretty common for superhero battles to last a while. I mean, they have the stamina to hold up against one each other, and it makes for a pretty exciting battle. So now Battle Beast has met his match, the leader of the Viltrumites, Thrag. As soon as they hit it off, this fight lasts a long time. I'm talking numerous days of just ripping each other apart. And plus, you know how violent the show gets as well. I mean, this episode, when it finally does air, is going to be insane. It's going to be a mess. We saw the damage 2 Viltrumites can do to a city, and these guys are even scarier, honestly. Thrag and Throck are going to make a mess wherever they end up, and his stamina is just insane. He can keep going and going, like an evil Energizer Bunny, with a mace, and also a lion. Number 3, a worthy opponent. So Battle Beast was literally in the middle of hooking up with Thresha when all of a sudden Space Racer comes in, says they found Thrag's location. Now, despite the brutal timing of this, he was like, okay, I'm ready to go. This is the moment he's been waiting for. All those lives taken, the ruling he's done is still not enough. This is the big one. This is the big guy. So he arrived to the planet Thraxa, where Thrag begins to make a joke out of his arrival. He's mocking him over his last defeat, but Battle Beast insists that the fight was not over, and a victory was still unclaimed. Thrag even admits that the Battle Beast would have made for an excellent ally. Battle Beast agrees. I mean, that's his whole thing. He wants to find his equal and his better. And right before they're about to battle each other again, the Ragnars are released from the alien woman. That same alien woman he was hooking up with. Traitor. She'd promised Alan the alien that she would not let Battle Beast die, even telling him how much he means to her while she does this, although this just kind of made it worse. So the Ragnars were not supposed to be released until after his death. That's what Battle Beast says. This is an unfair advantage, and those are a no-go for Battle Beast. Also, I love that already he was anticipating his own death. And if and only if it happened, then the backup would come out. So now we have quite the distraction going on. So what does Battle Beast do while Thrag isn't looking? Number 2, he teams up with the enemy. The battle has to be fair. Battle Beast needs his glory, and all he has to do is do it the right way. No teaming up, no overpowering Thrag. It's gotta be one-on-one. He's insane, but honorable nonetheless. Because at this point, he actually teamed up with Thrag. They started fighting the Ragnars together, and he tells Thrag, this planet will be torn apart by the fury of our clashing. I will allow nothing to steal that from me. And Thrag thinks he's a fool for assisting him, and honestly, I have to agree. Because only a few pages later, more company arrives. They arrive and start taking out the pesky Ragnars, and this is the perfect opportunity for him to take out Thrag, while he's very much distracted. But he's opposed to this. It's not the warrior way. What he does has to have meaning, and he's going to prove that he and he alone is worthy of his gift. He's going to get the glory of the battle that he yearns for. After all, this is Battle Beast's entire life. And finally, number 1, an honorable death. You were warned about spoilers for a reason. This is that reason. The next issue, we see glimpses of this battle. Every few pages, it would cut back to these connected punches, and it's just a mess. These guys are laying each other out for days at a time. Thrag even calls Battle Beast a maniac during this bloodbath, and he's like, yep, absolutely, you bet, that's exactly what I am. And finally, after destroying each other, Battle Beast biting chunks off of Thrag, and Thrag literally ripping Battle Beast apart, a winner came out on top. That winner being Thrag. Now, before Thrag crushed his heart, Battle Beast has some last words to say. And those words are thankful. Battle Beast actually has to thank him. He thanks him for giving him his dying wish, which was an opponent that is truly worth fighting. Now, his body was left to the Thraxans to incinerate while they celebrate good times, and his hide was removed and used as a cape for Thrag. This is going to be a crazy cliffhanger at the end of season 2 or 3. I mean, I'm sure they're going to move things around like they did with the Guardians of the Globe betrayal, but this for sure has last episode vibes, definitely. With a surprising result, if you ask me as well. In the final issue, it does reveal that Battle Beast had a daughter, and yes, she's just as addicted to fighting as her father. Kicking off the list at number 10, comic book origins. Okay, Nolan Grayson is clearly not a regular person at all. He's introduced to us in the show as this Superman-like character voiced by J.K. Simmons, who does an amazing job. He made his first comic book appearance, of course, in Invincible issue 1 from Image Comics back in 2003 from the mind of Robert Kirkman. He comes from the planet Viltrum, and he's part of a race called the Viltrumites, who are these super-powered beings. All the dudes there are super jacked, and they have mustaches. Pretty awesome. I wouldn't fit in either department, actually. Now, this planet was quite brutal, but I'll get into that a little bit later on. Before we continue on with this list, guys, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It's really helpful for our channel. You're the best. Thank you so much for watching. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right back into this list. Number 9, the best father ever. Okay, when Nolan first arrived to Earth, he met Cecil Stedman. We're going to start right at Earth, then we'll make our way back and explain some more as we go. He met Cecil Stedman. He taught him Earth cultures and all that jazz. So he adopted the name Grayson and tried to seem more of a human being. And then he eventually saved a woman named Debbie, fell in love, got married, the classic superhero beginnings. All he needs now is a 9 to 5 and a pair of glasses, and he's well on his way. So he eventually took on the name Omni-Man thanks to Cecil's help, and a superhero costume designer, Art Rosenbaum, came in to complete the picture. And he started to save the day while doubling as a super husband. Eventually, Debbie and Nolan gave birth to a child, this child being Mark. So while he was fighting crime, going toe-to-toe with supervillains, Nolan eventually would meet up with his superhero team, the Guardians of the Globe. Now, he didn't join them per se, but he worked alongside them on various missions. He told everybody a backstory about how he arrived to Earth, including Debbie, but there were some lies sprinkled in. But who are these Guardians of the Globe? Let's talk about them. Number 8, Guardians of the Globe. If you're new to Invincible comics, maybe you've never read them before, but you know that it's on Amazon Prime, and maybe you wanted to try it out, see how it is, see what the buzz is all about, you were probably pretty shocked how that first episode ended. Even if you knew about it, it happens quite earlier in the show, earlier than it does in the comics, that's for sure. So creator Robert Kirkman himself explained what happened by saying this. Having it move up, we do get an extra sense of like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Debbie has no clue what's going on with her husband, and how is she going to find out, / if she finds out. Yeah, Omni-Man straight up destroys the Guardians of the Globe. He calls them all to meet up, and then once they're there, he just picks them off one by one. It's absolutely disgusting. It's so gory, it's awesome, but it's so gory and so evil. And the group members resemble the Justice League a bit, and actually they're all voiced by Walking Dead alumni, which is quite fun. So we have War Woman, we have Green Ghost, Martian Man, Red Rush, Darkwing, Immortal, and Aquarius. They're all introduced to us in a cool fashion and then gone, just like that. Wild. But now we gotta go back and talk about Mark. We gotta go talk about his son a bit. Number 7, Mark. So we pick up in the show Invincible with, of course, Invincible, voiced by Steven Yeun. Now he's just a normal high school student at this point, 17 years old, he gets bullied a tad, he's nervous to talk to girls, the whole thing. But with his father being Omni-Man, he too has the blood of the Viltrumite race flowing through him, which means superpowers. As soon as he discovered his father was Omni-Man, he was 7 years old, and he dreamt of being a superhero just like him. Maybe not too much like him, let's hope. So one day, Mark found out that he was eventually gonna get these superpowers, so he would wait every day. And finally, when he was taking out the trash, he accidentally tossed the second bag a bit too hard, and it turned into space debris quickly. So here we go, time for powers, let's go, this is a good thing. Number 6, tough love. Now, when you become a superhero, just like your father, that sounds like a great time, on paper. I mean, they're playing super catch, they're bonding, it's awesome. But what makes us get a sense of, oh, is when Norman really starts to hurt Mark. While Mark's going through training and getting used to his powers, what he can and can't do, Norman starts punching him really hard. At one point, he punches the wind out of him. And Mark's shocked at first. He's like, why did you just do that? Like, that really hurt. He treats him almost like he's not his son for a minute, but then he kind of snaps back into it. He does this in order to protect him. He says nobody out there is ever going to pull their punches, so you got to get used to that now, right from the beginning. Now, this upsets Mark at first, because it's all new and shocking to him, but when that bully comes back around later on in school, Mark demands him to punch him numerous times as hard as he can. He wants to know what he can take, what he's really capable of. So he does, and it does nothing. So now he's slowly becoming invincible. This is a big stepping stone. So the training is helping, that's awesome. It's getting him used to the super life, but is this still the best way to get trained by your father in this dark, brutal way? I mean, Mark has no idea it's about to get so much worse. Number 5, true homeworld. In issue 11 of Invincible, Nolan explains more of his backstory, but this time he doesn't hold back on the past. He explains the truth to his son. Yes, he is from Viltrum, but it's not exactly how you think. See, when they decided that in order to obtain intergalactic dominance, they have to eliminate the weakest links. And I'm not talking about a couple of people, I'm talking about half the population, Thanos style. It was a mess. All that was left were the strongest warriors, so they figured, okay, step 2, let's just go conquer other planets as well. So they needed to find planets that were far along where it's actually worth it to conquer them and add them to the empire, but not too strong where they could overcome their defenses, right in that little sweet spot, little evil sweet spot. And then Omni-Man and Smethers would go down to the planet and be like, hey, if you're cool, then we're just gonna take your planet real quick and you can have our tech. Deal? Awesome. And some planets would agree, some planets would let them run it, but the planets that didn't agree and didn't allow this, well, they didn't really have a choice. Number 4, less than 50. Omni-Man's true arrival to Earth was also different than he first made it seem. A virus was wiping out the Viltrumite population, and they were down to less than 50, and Nolan was among them. But the Empire now had a different strategy. They couldn't keep taking over planets, numbers were too low, so instead, the Empire decided to use their long lifespan and infiltrate those societies first and weaken the chance of the resistance. Like maybe suiting up and pretending to be a hero named Omni-Man. Perhaps, maybe something like that. So Nolan was one of the first chosen for this task, to keep an eye on Earth, make sure they cannot resist, and it was up to Nolan to do whatever he wants for the 500 years while he was going to be there. Now after 500 years, all that knowledge collected would be used to eventually take over the planet under Viltrum's ruling. But that kind of changed for a bit once Nolan met his future wife. Number 3, he has a human connection. So as soon as Nolan arrived in the 80s, he saved that woman's life, Debbie, that I mentioned earlier. Now the same woman he would fall in love with and have Mark with. It was love at first sight. So now his motives were starting to change at this point. Kind of. He knew he at least wanted to enjoy his time and live as a human, so he lied about his mission with the Viltrumite Empire, and instead he told Debbie and later on Mark that he was sent to advance human technology and protect the Earth from other dangerous aliens. So he lied, started out being a boring old human being, and while some concepts were new and exciting, he started to suit up and fight alongside Earth's other mightiest heroes, but he was well beyond them, of course, being Omni-Man. So it didn't take long for him to start enjoying these things, and eventually he ran into the superhero team, well, you know that team, the one I mentioned earlier, the Guardians of the Globe. But we know how that turned out. Number 2, father and son time. So all this backstory, all these lies, the brutal backstabbing Nolan did to the Guardians of the Globe, now what? Well, when Nolan saved a carnival from a monster, he had the misfortune of running into one of these Guardians of the Globe. Turns out one of them's still alive. The Immortal is, well, yeah, he's immortal. He comes back demanding answers for that mess that he made with the team earlier. Omni-Man is even impressed. He says he has no idea how he survived, but he should have stayed dead. So when Mark sees this on TV, he shows up to offer his dad help, shocked as well at what's going on. He has no idea what to even think of this. So Omni-Man believes that his mother is little more than a pet, because of the difference in the lifespan. How brutal is that? You show up to help your dad and offer some backup, and then you get this bomb dropped on you. So now Nolan has fully flipped. He's trying to convince Mark to look at the bigger picture here. Well, he doesn't really give him a choice. And finally, number 1, he's the worst father ever. So as if it couldn't possibly get any worse, Mark tells his dad to beat it, get out of here, his plan sucks, and there's no way that can possibly happen. He doesn't even believe it. He doesn't care if he lives 1,000,000 years. This is his home, and he's not letting Nolan, his father, destroy it. And the following issue is just an ultimate beatdown from father to son. This is like the training montage, but times 1,000. It's just brutal. And while he's beating up his own son, he's doing a villain monologue. He's like, look at this mess. One punch from us, and 1,000 of these weak human beings lose their lives. So right after he gets tossed through a building, Nolan tells Mark his mother never meant anything to him. Brutal. And then bam, they crash through the subway, more insults coming in hot. He doesn't give a damn about anybody on this planet. They mean nothing to him. Bam, just a mighty beatdown / roast. And finally, they take it to the sky. and Nolan straight up leaves. He leaves Earth. He said he'd rather see the planet burn than spend another minute living amongst us. He even tells Mark whatever, he can produce more offspring, no big deal, bye, peace out. Now before he leaves, he does pull one punch back right after Mark calls him dad one last time. All heartbreaking stuff, and it's all coming together in the first season of Invincible. I'm loving it. I can't wait for the finale.